This is an FOU Studios podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Geek XP, where we're going to level up with a little bit of GXP. As always, I'm your host, Peter the Geek. With me today, we got #KillJosh.
#optional hashtag.
And of course, we also have Bill Murray today.
Yep, that's my Facebook name.
Not that Bill Murray. Our special guest today is someone who I owe so much to because of how she's helped me with my personal stage combat experience. She's a certified teacher with the SAFD. She's an actor, a director, and just a wonderful person. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Claire Yearman to the room. Claire?
All right, Claire.
Welcome.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
It's great to have you here. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
You kind of gave me, you already gave me a lovely introduction. So I am an actor, and that's how I got started. And then when I was in grad school, that was where I started really focusing on stage combat. So that was where I started my journey into becoming a certified teacher and a fight choreographer. And then I also direct. So I work predominantly in the Chicagoland area.
Okay.
I'm a member of a theater company in Terabang Theater Project, and I generally just keep myself pretty busy with different acting projects and teaching projects, etc.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah. So, how much of your time do you dedicate between your combat work right now and are you still pursuing independent projects, whether or not they involve combat?
Yes. So, for example, right now I'm actually cast in a Tennessee Williams one act, which there is no violence in that.
Ooh.
Very different.
Very, very different. It's definitely a horse of a different color. But then I'm also choreographing violence for a play called Grace, which has some gun work in it. And then I'm doing a production of She Kills Monsters, which is very fantasy driven. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but
I am not, but it sounds like Peter is.
Right? He got very excited.
I feel like I've seen a lot of people that have been pulling up She Kills Monsters. I don't want to kill the momentum, but we are starting to do it already. So I really just want to make sure that we actually announce that it's just about time to geek out. All right, Claire. So what are we geeking out about today? I know it's probably going to be stage combat-y related, but what are we geeking out about?
Oh my gosh. Well, we already started kind of geeking out about
yeah.
She Kills Monsters. So,
Let's do it.
I mean, if I want to, I could say, if we want to spin it, one of the key elements in that play is Dungeons and Dragons. And so it's not your normal, quote unquote, stage combat all the time. You get to play with, more fantastical weapons. Monsters, there's actually a fight where there's a character that comes on that is just a gigantic eyeball. So
what? Dude, this place sounds so cool, and I've
spoilers,
never heard of it.
Yeah, so dealing with okay, so how do you kill a character like that, and what kind of costume are we really going to have them in? Because I've done the show once where it was a human being, and now this time I think it is just going to be an eyeball running up to the person.
That's incredible.
Does the eyeball roll up to the person?
Right.
Or...
I mean, that could be a choice too. Yeah.
So when you say that it's D&D based, which is adding the fantastic weapons and stuff, is it also I don't even know how to phrase my question. How
I've gotten you too excited.
you have.
What does the magic missile look like?
Oh my god! I made that joke in the production meeting and one person laughed. I'm like, okay, I'm really glad you hired me because at least I know what that is.
Yes, basically. So I guess what my brain is trying to ask is what is because from stage combat with fight logic and trying to make it super realistic sword fighting and stuff, that kind of stuff. What is the biggest change you've noticed going to a fantastical D&D type fight style?
Oh, that's a really good question. Well, the first thing
good.
I have is, of course, dealing with the level of talent that I have, because I can have really amazing ideas in my head, but if my actors can't actually facilitate everything that I'm dreaming up, I need to scale it back a little bit. So I do have a lot of ideas, and I'm excited. I'm going in like a couple of weeks to really start with them. So one thing I like to do, because I usually have a couple of nerdier actors in the group, so I like to incorporate ideas that they have as well.
Okay.
Because I know a bit about D&D, but if someone's like, "Well, you know, a kobold actually does this," I'll be like, "Okay, cool."
Oh
I get
yeah.
Right. In the newest
so-
edition of the handbook, that bow is no longer as powerful. You should use a different one.
Oh, those people exist.
Yes, they do.
So I like to make sure that people feel like they have a voice in it as well, so I can incorporate some of that. But since it's fantastical, it doesn't have to be totally realistic. Things can be a little more, not comic in a sense of funny, but kind of larger than life. More fantastically based.
Like Scott
And
Pilgrim.
as long as I think
That's what I'm thinking. Scott Pilgrim versus the World, like that kind of
Yes.
fantastical.
Yeah, and I
Awesome.
think if you establish the world really well, people will go with you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, definitely. Because if you start off right away with good point work for like some sort of duel, and then you go to the huge spinny jump cuts, it's not going to read quite as
Right.
well.
Because also by the end of the play, they're fighting is it 5 heads? I feel like that's wrong. There's I'll just say multiple-headed dragon that the main character
Hydra?
needs to battle.
Oh my God, they fight Tiamat.
It's the Tiamat. They have to fight the
Oh my
Tiamat. So,
Peter.
Peter knows.
I am
so the
freaking
way
out.
we're going to be doing it is actually with puppets. And so it's going to
Yes.
be very stylized. It's going to be pretty cool.
I am geeking out so hard right now. I'm so jealous you get to work on this.
Puppets are awesome too.
Well, it is a really popular show, so the chances that it will come around again and I will choreograph it again, and I could always maybe pull you into it. There's always that aspect. So just, I'll let you know.
Oh, definitely. That's so cool. Gosh, I'm a little bit stuck on it right now, but yeah,
It is kind of shiny. I'm sorry, I have to throw out a Firefly reference whenever I can.
Shiny.
I love it. So, when kind of keeping along this kind of more fantastical, bigger fighting style kind of thing, when we go to see movies, there are so many superheroes out right now. It's
yeah.
almost like we kind of like it's almost like an elephant in the room with the fight.
ends.
Sometimes I was watching Avenger because I'm doing the Road to Infinity, which is one movie a week until Infinity War comes out, and I just watched the Avengers not that long ago, and there are some fight moments that literally don't make any sense. Like jumping and spinning with a huge punch across the face. Even
Captain America does that to Loki.
the captain.
You were ready to say that.
Yes.
I watched it again. I think it might be supposed to be a kick. I don't know for sure because he does this wonky like split thing when he's throwing the punch. But again, I don't know.
That feels frivolous.
It was weird. It was weird. Like you have to watch it. Yeah, it's in the German scene when Loki he's got the staff to his head, and it's the kneel and not today, and he like lands the punch on today, but it's just a weird move.
There's a lot of that in movies where you'll look at something and you're like, what the hell? And you want to go back and look at it again. You're like, that doesn't really make any kind of logic. Why you would do that? What was the purpose of that? Or, okay, no, they just really wanted him to spin in the air because it looked pretty.
Yeah.
So
That's probably the answer a lot of the time.
Right. I
Exactly.
think my favorite impractical move that I see in movie fist fights is the jumping and leaping punch,
Yeah.
where you have no part of your body on the ground as you throw a
There's
punch.
like no force actually. It's
Oh, yeah.
It's a superhero punch. Yeah. That it happens way too often.
I also see I want to say I've seen The Rock do it in one of the Fast and the Furious movies.
He goes
yeah,
hard.
it's something you see in modern action movies, and I don't see how that could have much impact.
So I guess when you are trying to choreograph, you have to try to work fight logic into it a little bit so that it makes sense.
Yeah.
How do you find you tackle when it's like I want a flashy spin move like the director says? How do you find yourself justifying moments like that?
Oh, great question.
Well, one, the person who I learned this life lesson from will remain nameless because, well, it was a negative on their part. But I had an old friend who used to really suffer from, I think, like the chronic, like cool move syndrome. So
Syndrome.
he would pull me in to help him with choreo. And next thing I know, he'd be telling me, like, all right, so I want you to like thrust over his shoulder and then you're going to bob and weave. I'm like, what? Wait, is this that shit move from Blade that you want us to do? I was like, you know what? That works on film. That works on film. On stage, this is not going to work. So I think, you're going to do yourself a disservice if you have a move that is illogical to do on stage, that just isn't going to work because we don't have all of the, I don't know all the things, but all the special effects magic that they can do in a movie.
Yeah.
So one, what can we do on stage would be my first question. And then how do we work it in so it can make sense? Even if it's something simple, and I use simple kind of loosely, like if I did a fight and I was like, okay, I want this fight to end with you getting kicked in the face. All right. So how do we get to that point to make it work and to make it make sense? So it's not just like, okay, there's a random face kick. Why? And would the character actually kick the person in the face? If I come back and think, no, they probably wouldn't for whatever reason that is, whether it be skill, who knows, maybe they at that point they've been immobilized and they can't use their legs,
Right.
Knowing all of those questions so that it doesn't seem odd is one thing, but just building to it. So I think you can have really fantastic moments, but I think you can also have really simple moments done well that will creep people out. I mean, just some of the fights I've seen recently, both on stage and off, some of the noises you hear make. It's like,
The body part noises you definitely don't want to hear, like that celery cracking noise.
Yes. I just rewatched John Wick 2, and I was like, some of the noises in that are just horrible in such a great way. Like,
horrible.
Like whoever did the sounds for this is like spot on.
Speaking of sounds in combat, one of my slightly off tangent, but it's one of the most enthusiastic sound designs I can think of. The first Mask of Zorro with Anthony Hopkins and Antonio Banderas. When you listen to those sword fights, they are ridiculously over Foleyed
sword fights.
Oh, but they're glorious in that over exuberance.
I recall this.
They did have some awesome sword fights in that movie. I remember that.
Oh, so good. So good. So, I mean, speaking of sword fights, I mean, all of these questions, it's hard. It's kind of hard when we're talking about a very visual medium. But to people who aren't super stage combat-y, like I'm an advanced acting combatant, I want to be a certified teacher someday, which would be great. But if they don't know stage combat, in your opinion, what would be a great way to explain the difference between what works in sword fights and what doesn't work in sword fights?
In terms of stage combat?
In stage combat, film, anything. Sky's the limit. Sorry if I stumped you. Didn't try to.
No, it's okay. I'm like going back through the phrasing. So I think the thing is believability. So, and we don't want it to be a point, I never want it to be a point where the audience is scared for the actor, because if that's the case, I failed. Now, as a choreographer, I feel like I failed. Now, I have definitely
they should be afraid for the character, not the actor.
Like the Spider-Man issues. Those Spider-Man issues. Nobody wanted to see that musical for a good reason.
Right. Now, there are some really intense plays out there, and I've choreographed some pretty gritty stuff because Chicago likes it gritty.
Yeah, they do.
So the subject matter might be making you uncomfortable, but you should leave the productions I work on not being fearful, like, oh my God, did Claire just kill Peter? No, Peter's fine. He's okay. Don't panic. So I think the first thing is you're not worried about the actor, but then the next is you really sincerely are worried about the character. I really want you to be believing that that person is trying to stab them, cut them, what have you, and that it looks plausible. So that is the thing I love. I love sitting in the audience for shows that I've choreographed and hearing the vocal reactions to things. And I'm like, okay, that worked there, and then throwing in things they don't expect. So like I like to incorporate sometimes, if I can, if it's not a like rapier and dagger where you don't have a free hand, but throw a punch in, throw a kick in, because they're expecting the sword to do something. What happens if a person goes to the ground and one person is still, upright and the other person's on their back? So adding in elements that make the fight more desperate, make it more challenging. I love working with found objects, so it's not just a regular fight.
Scrappy fights.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a show that has a sword fight in it, but it's an old movie that is also a play called Dial M for Murder, and this woman is getting choked out on a desk And right before she gets thrown there, I had her pick up the trash can and bash the guy in the face.
Yes.
No one was expecting that, but it's like, this is someone who has no fight training at all. This woman, is just a normal, ordinary person. What would she do to try to not get killed? Well, grab the stuff around herself.
Yeah.
So,
Totally, yeah.
all right, here's a metal trash can. Bang.
That's good. Yeah, that'll
get away from you.
that'll do some damage no matter what.
Yep.
So I want to throw something. This might be a kind of background for those in the listening audience who may not know this, but the actual training you go through to become a certified fight teacher is a bit more extensive than people might think. And it's not just a generic, this is combat. It's like you have hand-to-hand, you have your blades, you have sword training. So not to go back too far, but like what do you need to go through to end up with the kind of certifications and the kind of opportunities that you get here?
Because I know none of this. I'm totally that listener that's like, please tell me how you become a teacher of stage combat. That sounds awesome.
Well, I will spare you some of the protocols with the SAFD because there are many. But first and foremost, you need to be certified in all 8 weapons. So unarmed, a rapier and dagger, single sword, small sword, quarterstaff, sword and shield, broadsword, and knife.
That's awesome.
Crazy, right? So cool.
Right now, I mean, you can also get certified in theatrical firearms. However, that, unless they've changed something, I don't think is required, but that may have changed. So if I misspoke speaking on that, I'm sorry.
I mean, I was just at the National this last year, and it's not it's still not required from what I remember, but it's something that you wanted. You obviously wanted in your
wheelhouse. It was something that before I became a CT, we all got it. So it was like, okay, do we need this or no? Oh, this is just gravy. Okay, awesome.
Good gravy.
So sorry, I know gravy is good, but you need to start with that. You also then need to have logged a certain number of hours in each discipline to even be considered eligible to apply. And then there's timing and other things. So they really want to know that you've taken the time to learn the disciplines, taken the time to work with also different teachers. There's a requirement to work with a variety of different individuals. So it's not just that you've only trained with one person. They really want you to get out and get as much experience with different people because, as Peter probably knows, we all teach a little bit different. So we all have our own styles. Some people come from a very theatrical background. They started, like me. You're an actor and you stumbled on this and you thought it was really cool. Other people started in martial arts. And so they have a very different perspective. Now they're also, in theater, but, their background is not my background. And then there's, variety there. And then there's also people who have a really strong military background and martial arts background. So then they have another perspective. So the more people you get to play with and get to know is really helpful for you because I think it helps you find your voice and incorporate that into the work that you do.
I like that they make you do that. That's like really important. I teach myself, so it's like really cool to think that they actually make you go to other teachers and like feel around. That's so important about like learning. You gotta learn from a lot of different people.
And I mean, not just in theater, but I mean, I've had in stage combat, but even if you have a teacher you don't particularly like or care for their style, you're still going to learn from that.
Oh yeah.
So,
it's interesting. He's a choreographer in New York, Jay Allen Sudduth. He was the guy who I worked with him. I just went to the National Stage Combat Workshop this last year, very much so thanks to Claire. And I cannot thank her enough because I did my SP, my skills renewal for my rapier dagger, which I now have it. I've had it for like 5 or 6 years now. Now I have it for 3 more. Well, 2 more now because it's been a year. And then I went for my broadsword and my unarmed, both with Claire, whose choreography is a very specific style. I like it a lot. And then going to National with Alan, I like it a lot, but it is some of the most like left field dramatic, but not in a desperate way, choreography you're going to work with because he fights dirty in his fights. Like it is ridiculous to work with him. So just in the span of working with 2 teachers with the same weapons, one of them had us use the pommel like a hammer. One of them had like the glissades and where you have the blades pass with each other was one of the main parts of the fight. Like it's just I mean, I'm also a total geek for this kind of thing. I love the sword
No
combat.
shame, no shame.
No shame at all. So like to me, it's that much cooler when you feel those different styles. And then when you do have to choreograph something that's different, like when you're going to a fantastic style versus a super realistic style versus I want this moment to happen, you then have the toolbox to be like, okay, I know that this is going to read well here versus I just want him to throw his shield at him because he's desperate.
Out of curiosity, this is a super random question. Like in big fight scenes in like movies, for example, like Helm's Deep, how many stage combat people are working on those to make those as badass as they are?
Take it away, Claire.
Oh my! I wish Patrick Kelly were here.
I know.
So I'm trying to think on some of the things he told me because Patrick Kelly is also a certified teacher, and he's worked on the TV show Vikings with Richard Ryan, and Richard Ryan does. Not sure the right title, but he does the sword work, I want to say, for that TV series.
Yeah.
I've seen some of the photos he's posted, and it seems like it's a pretty large group of guys that they have. So I'm going to take an estimate and say like 50. But again, they might have more sometimes. They might have less sometimes. I think it depends on how large the battle is.
Gosh, that's cool. It's just cool to think about that there's people just like in the background doing the same thing over and over again. And I'm totally now going to like try my best to pick that out when I watch movies now for fun. That's cool.
Well, sometimes
Some guy who can barely see through his Uruk makeup.
Yeah.
But I mean, but that's true. Sometimes you look at the people in the background. I mean, when in college I had to write a paper about some different fights with Matt Kreider, who was my teacher. And sometimes you look at them; they're literally just like holding hands, like on a weapon, like pushing back and forth, because it's easily repeatable. It looks brutal, and it's something that might happen on a battlefield. Like it's simple, but
it could be happening.
But they do it for a solid 2 minutes.
Yeah.
We flash
Maybe
by.
they do. Yeah,
yeah,
someone pulls that dagger out and is trying to put it through the chink in your armor, and you're like, no.
Please no, please no.
Yeah.
Right. Right, absolutely.
Oh God, I didn't even think about makeup, Josh. I you just said like the orc makeup. I'm like, oh gosh, stage combat when you are like dressed as a ridiculous character must be horrible.
I haven't had to do it yet. Have you had to do anything like that, Claire?
I'm trying to think.
Inhibiting
what's my
costumes.
most difficult. I mean, really, the only frustration I had was when I was the lead villain at the Bristol Ren Fair for a couple years, and
Awesome.
Yeah, right. I just like got so happy for you.
I would choreograph a fight, and in fight clothes, I'd be like, "Oh, this is going to be brilliant," and I'd, be jumping, running around, falling down, getting back up, and it was fine. And then I'd put the costume on, and I'm like, "Wait a minute! Now I have this very long skirt that I have to deal with, and my costume usually probably weighed between like." I'll be nice and say 30 pounds with everything on it, because you're wearing you're wearing upholstery fabric pretty much, and leather, leather and metal and all this other stuff. Yeah. So once you put it on, don't get on a scale. But with everything I would have around my waist, because I'm corseted, and then I also have my sword belt on and all of that, I started finding with the new costume they had built me in my second year, I couldn't really bend.
Oh, geez.
And so I had choreographed this move where I got I don't remember. I think I got smacked in the face and I fell down and I couldn't get up.
Oh no.
Oh, no.
I was like a bug on my back. I'm like, oh, this is ridiculous.
Oh no.
And so everyone was laughing and I'm like, I can't bend because of the corset and all this. There's so much fabric around my middle. I can't bend. So the guys were laughing, and I said, "Fuck you! You're in a doublet and tights. You, of course, can do it. Switch costumes with me." I was like, So that was probably the one thing of editing my fights a little bit to know, like, okay, I probably can't go to the ground, or
to get
just
some
knowing
pants for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I fought them on that. I actually fought for doing a fight where I ripped my skirt off and fought. And management said, no, all women on the streets have to have a skirt.
Oh, Pashah, but you're the villain. You do what you want.
Right. I was like, come on now. Couldn't I just lose it somehow?
Plus, what a revealing, cool scene. That would have been so cool at a Ren Fair. I would have loved to have seen that.
I was like, couldn't I have been in disguise, come in a mask? No, fine. Ooh.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because I know several members of Vixens on Guard, which they're an all-female fight troupe, and they fight in corsets. And one of the big staples of their outfits is they do wear pants. They wear tights.
Yeah.
And there are some Ren fairs that say, but if you're going to come, you have to be in skirts. And the vixens are like, no, we are female fighters. This is what we do. And so they always fight, and normally they succeed because the vixens are friggin' awesome. But yeah,
they are. I've gotten to see them before.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
They really, really are. But it's a challenge too, for women. There's the comment of Ginger Rogers did everything Fred Astaire did backwards and in heels, and it's true. You start thinking about that of, okay, how do I modify my fight now that I've got all this other stuff going on, to make it work. In terms of choreography, the trickiest thing I ever had to choreograph costume-wise for an actor, I did a stylized Commedia show, and the Capitano character had this really amazing face mask, but his nose was so long, it was impairing his vision. So he was having some problems when he was sword fighting because his nose was in the way.
Oh.
So we wanted to make sure, one, that we didn't damage the mask, but he's like, I'm having trouble, like he would kind of go cross-eyed because if he looked straight on, his eyes would just zero in on the nose.
Oh, man.
So I was like, okay, well, let's work through this to make sure that he can, how can we work around so that he can see where everything is? Because he's got this huge schnoz to deal with.
Oh, that's so terrible. It's such a funny thing to think about.
I was going to say, that it's not a problem you would necessarily expect.
Yep.
Yeah, so there were a couple moves I modified because I'm like, okay, he just can't see it because the nose is in the way. So let's make it a high line, or let's make it a head cut, or let's do this instead so we can get it to a more comfortable place where he can then adjust.
It's just such a funny thought. Every time you say when the nose gets in the way, I just immediately have that image in my brain. It's so funny.
See, I went to Cyrano because Cyrano has a great sword fight in it. And
yes.
I mean,
do that.
And even if you want, going back since I left Found Objects, if you watch the Roxanne version with Steve Martin, that is a brilliant found object fight.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that movie in a long time.
It's been I was just going to say, I need to watch that. It's been a really long time since I've seen it.
It's still great. Steve Martin's still great.
That's good to know.
I mean, I would hope and expect that to be the case. Yeah. Well, it's every time I meet you, I always want to pick your brain about this kind of thing. But more and more frequently, a lot of, especially with modern plays, there's a lot more like domestic style, like found object with, especially like kitchen knives and just like unarmed kind of stuff. How do you find, do you find yourself getting trapped in certain loops, or do you find that because each plane, each blocking, each actor is so different, you don't have to, like, you don't find yourself doing the same 4 to 5 moves every other show?
Oh no, I've never felt trapped by any of the choreography. In fact, more so, I think there are definitely more times where I read a play and I'm like, dang it, playwright. I was like, you come up with the darndest things. I'm like, so they're coming up with things that are forcing us to get more inventive, which is good. But sometimes it's really challenging to figure out, financially. I mean, I think financially is usually the first hurdle because, a theater company can approach me and say, we're doing this play. This is what we want. And I'll say, what's your budget? Nothing. Cool. We're not doing that. So a lot of times people don't even consider that. And by consider that, they might not even think of blood costs money.
Oh, yeah.
True that. Blood costs money.
Blood costs money. Even just making the most basic blood is going to cost you some money. And then also cleaning said blood is going to cost you some money.
Yeah.
So then going, past that, okay, well, now let's talk about what we need to do for this this violence that's about to happen. I love knife. In fact, right now, I probably would say it's my favorite. I also get to use it the most, so I will come up with some pretty particularly nasty things to do to people on stage.
Yes.
Which
I love the way you said that. You seem so happy.
I think it's way creepier that I'm like smiling really big while I say that. But the next important thing is, I would say, being in Chicago, and definitely other not other theaters, but other towns that have a lot of small space theaters, being respectful of the audience. So, knowing what is appropriate to, portray what needs to be done in the script, but also you don't want your audience to walk out and vomit. I mean, a friend of mine did a production in Chicago many, many, many moons ago, and that was actually something that happened. It was so gratuitous, the audience would walk out and vomit and then come back to see what was happening.
Oh my gosh.
And he was very proud of the work, and I wish I could have seen the show, but now he questions, like, maybe, was that the goal we were, aiming for?
I'm having trouble thinking of anything that
Like
could.
what play?
Yeah, like
Maybe like
well, like
Tis
what?
pity she's a whore.
To finish is a whore.
Tis pity she's a whore.
Tis pity she's a
Ah.
whore.
Yeah,
I'm still just starting
there's a scene where they cut out a woman's heart, and they actually
Oh.
had a real heart on stage.
ooh, fun.
yeah.
So they
that'll
got
do
it
it.
from a butcher shop.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that'll do it.
Wow.
That
That'll do
probably
it.
freaked people out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, interestingly, I was asked to choreograph Knife for West Side Story for a high school at one point.
Okay.
I'm proud of the work I did. So none of this is me being like, I should have done this. I'm interested to hear what your opinion of what I did was, because I know what the script says. I know what the script says, but I denied what the script says for the moment where
Ooh,
everything got
Peter.
killed. Because I had the two of them end up in the knife fight on the ground with one knife, trying to push down on the other, because I had Bernardo get disarmed, and it was Riff pushing down on Bernardo, and that's when Tony pulls him off. But Bernardo ended up keeping the knife, and I did one of those leg cuts so that it was right on the femoral artery. And just a really quick death for Riff then. And then I had Tony pick up the knife and cut Bernardo's throat instead of a stab like most people do.
Whoa, fun.
Yeah.
Fun change.
It was fun. And a lot of people, when they found out I was the fight choreographer, said, "You cut that child's throat." And I said, "Hold on, I didn't do that, first of all."
Well, but you did.
I did. I had way too much fun with it. But yeah, so I'm interested to hear, because it is West Side Story. There's a lot of like expectation around that show.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it was also very impulsive. It was not like a slow like drag across. It was like he just walked up, and it was almost like an impulsive, like I did it, and then like surprised he had actually finished, like done that thing.
It was a passionate moment.
Correct.
Which I think, one of the other things, and I talked about this a little bit already, is what the character's knowledge base of fighting is, and then like, how are they feeling in that moment? So what I would think of in Tony doing something like that is it's not premeditated at all. It's
God, no.
reactionary.
Yeah.
So he grabs it and does it, and then he realizes what he's done. So with that, I would say, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And if the director is on board with that, if that is part of their vision and they think that that's where it could go, okay, fine.
Yeah.
I mean, every production is going to be different. I've already choreographed 3 Macbeths, and none of them have been the same. So, and I expect that. I mean, I'm sure I could go back if I get the opportunity to do other plays multiple times. I'm going to have the same thought of it's never going to be exactly the same. Also, because I'm never going to want the choreography to be exactly the same. But, some shows, fine. West Side is always going to be knives. Other shows, you might even change the weapons.
Yeah.
So I've done a Macbeth that was all broadswords. I've done a Macbeth that was all found objects, knives, and guns. So, because they did a
Guns.
modern
That's cool.
telling of it. So, so it just depends kind of where, what the director's concept is, what they're trying to do with it, what the space allows, because
Yeah.
there are
That's a big
plenty
part
of
of it.
spaces around here where there's no way you could put a broadsword in there, or you'd have to be very, very careful.
I would be
very
interested to see
small.
I would be very, very interested to see a very, very careful broadsword fight.
Right?
Yeah, it's like, no.
Aw.
So, I mean, I would say typically around here, you're going to see a lot of unarmed, you're going to see a lot of knife and gun, and then you're going to see found objects. If you have a space that you can fit swords in, good for you. But, more often than not, it's between budget and space, it just might not be able to happen.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
But
Go ahead.
for you, I think that, that's definitely a fine choice, as long as you and the director were on board with it.
oh yeah, and she was. she likes to push things, so she was
Sounds
happy.
like
Okay.
you pushed it for that high school, man.
Oh,
I wish I was there.
I also had I didn't necessarily agree with this choice, but she wanted Bernardo and what's his name, not Grease, Diesel, to have a full-fledged fight before Tony got to the scene. So I choreographed a full-on unarmed fight for them, and there was a face kick that nobody believed, like nobody understood how it happened, even though it's one of the simplest just hand in front of face kicks. But like, yeah, it was brutal, and the audience was uncomfortable because not uncomfortable like, oh my god, but like they were enjoying like the moments of violence. Because
Cool that you got the kids to do
Yeah,
that, like
yeah.
high school kids,
Yes.
like in it, doing it for real. That's pretty awesome.
It was like, oh my god, kids are fighting. What is happening in small town called Wyowega? So this is actually, we've been talking for 35 minutes now.
No, we haven't.
Yes, we
no,
have.
we haven't. What?
So it's time for the Geek Out session to end, and we now have to actually transition to plus 10 XP.
Yeah.
This is where I say, Claire, it's not about you anymore, okay? It's
all right.
It's about us.
This is actually when we can, I mean, it's reserved for like if we have anything specific we want to talk about, if the Geek Out goes in completely random tangential directions. I know Josh has a question he wants to ask you.
Right. I'm tempted to ask about like the different kind of sword fighting styles that you see in different movies, like the difference that you see in Star Wars as opposed to Game of Thrones and things like that. But like, I have a more basic question first, and that is, in this this certification process, you ended up a master, a combat teacher, and I'm wondering, because I'm sure in the beginning it's so much about what is proper technique and what is proper safety. At what point in the process do you get to, and now these are what's the word I'm looking for?
I have no idea.
Limits?
No, these are the kind of leniencies that we allow, and where we diverge from real combat to add flair for a performance setting. At what point, like, is that instructed to you, or do you kind of pick that up through working with these teachers of different styles?
I'm not sure if I'm fully understanding your question, because safety would never be thrown out the window.
Oh,
So
no.
protocols and techniques won't go away, but if you're talking about the performance of the fight, that is something that every teacher I know focuses on from day one. I think it's a lot harder to go back. So, I mean, if I just look at this as I'm going to teach you this technique dry and not have you focused on your partner, how this is impacting your bodies, your breath, how to respond while he's attacking you and now you're attacking him, that would be doing you a horrible disservice, because then you've got that in your muscle memory and in your mind, and now I'm going to tell you, okay, now go back through everything we just did that you now have set, and now I want you to actually be aware that you are being attacked and start actually acting. So even doing, there's a exercise we do without even weapons in hands, and some people call it sticky hands. I learned it as push hands. But just getting used to sharing energy with someone, rocking back and forth, and then actively trying to touch them, not having it just be kind of two people rocking back in space. And I know this is kind of hard to see or visualize without doing it, but you have like the back of your hand to the back of one of their hands. And so you're actively trying to touch them while they're pushing you away. So once you think about, actually cutting at someone with a sword, that would be you pushing forward with your hand while they would be obviously leaning away from it, because who the hell would want to get hit by a sword unless they're a loony? And then, conversely, when you want to attack them, you're going to move forward. So getting used to responding that way. And then I think from there, I actually teach a class called Hero versus Coward. And you could take this a bunch of different ways, but it's taking the same choreography and changing your character. Changing, the choreography isn't going to change at all, but what if you have no desire to fight this person? Let's say also you have no skill whatsoever. Your character, not you yourself, but your character has no skill. Great. So you have zero desire to fight and you have zero skill. Cool. Now this other person has a really high desire to fight you, and let's say they're pretty good. That's not good odds.
No.
Not at all.
And I mean, if you want to see one of my favorite examples is the court jester.
Yes. Oh,
so
yes.
It's a brilliant fight. And then that fight, you get to watch them go back and forth. as Danny Kaye gets hypnotized and gets to go back and forth between being competent and incompetent.
It's so funny.
So it's
Oh,
a
wow.
lovely, it's an acting moment, really. It's a lovely scene to get to watch how his use of character informs the violence, because the choreography is the same. It's just the way he's portraying it.
Cool.
And I think
Yeah.
I think what you were thinking was happening, Josh, was that like there's a point where we try to like bend or break rules, but it's the idea of the survivability and all of those flary kind of things is never, it's not like a process that's something that comes later.
Okay, yeah, because I guess I'd assumed what was happened was that if you put a weapon in someone's hand on like day one of training, you spend the first X amount of time just going, here are the things you don't do with this because you're going to hurt yourself or someone else. And then later they would insert performance aspects of it.
I mean, I'll admit there are people I have fought, and this is a very short list of people, where I feel very comfortable with them. And so, yeah, maybe we'll get a little bit closer, or maybe I'll allow them to do something to me that I might not let another fight partner do. But it's because we work really well together. We understand how each other's bodies move. In fact, one of my best friends, Zach Meyer, he has freaking fast feet. So when we fight, I know that he can get the hell away. He also knows my point work is faster than his. So I can get to him faster with my blade, but he can run away faster.
Oh, that's
He
fun.
also, as I've joked, has a turbo button. So it's literally like, and he's gone. So we have had moments where I will go into a really deep lunge, deeper than I might have done for anybody else, because I know he won't be there. Because he's just so flippin' fast. So whereas if I went to do that with someone else, I'd be like, I'm going to get you. I know I'm going to get you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to cheat this and do a slightly smaller lunge because I know you don't move as fast.
To bring that to something that is very relevant for people who have seen the show Batsu that Josh and I both perform in, we have to pop a big red balloon in between us. Oh, by the way, Claire, I love you, but you should never see Batsu because I literally am hurt nightly with it, and that's the part of the show.
You should see Batsu, Claire.
It's
worth it.
It's a punishment game show. Anyway, we have to pop a balloon in between us, and we actually had a big safety conversation recently, fueled by me saying we need to talk about safety because the balloon pop, somebody had an elbow crash into a nose, and then there was a bloody nose on stage. Not good. So then, we started to talk about safety kind of stuff. But Josh and I have done this show so many times together that we don't do what we've decided, which is a perpendicular balloon pop on the floor. Josh and I still go face to face, which is funnier for the audience. It elevates it because the point of the big balloon pop is that it kind of looks like we're dry humping each other.
It doesn't kind of. It does.
It does. That's what it looks like. So the fact that Josh and I can do that is because I've known Josh for 8 years, I think.
Yeah,
more.
09.
Yes. Oh God.
Old buddies.
So that's the reason Josh and I can do that. But if I'm going on stage with somebody like a Chicago sub and Steve Grande, then I'm not gonna go. I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna go perpendicular. Not because I don't like him. I don't trust him.
Be safe.
But we have to be safe for that kind of thing. Oh, by the way, there's a Batsu Chicago, Claire. You should go see it.
Yeah. You should.
Okay.
Ooh, I've got a hypothetical what if question because I love those. I love movies. You love movies, I'm sure. If you could plop yourself into any movie battle scene, what would it be and why?
Oh my God.
I like this
This is
answer
like
already.
Christmas. But yet I'm like, I can only pick one. Damn it. Okay.
You could do two. I'll take two.
Oh my.
I know. It's like being a kid in a candy store.
There's so many to choose from.
I know, and that's why I'm like, well, I'd like to do that, but I'd like to do that. How could I do that? Also, I think my brain is kind of stuck in stuff that I've recently been watching. So I'm torn because I just started watching, and I'm still very early, so no spoilers, but I've been watching Outlander. So I have, the claymores and the broadswords and all of that in my head, as well as the guns. But then I finally saw Atomic Blonde, so I have that in my head. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And I've always wanted to play kind of a Milady-esque character where if you think you finally unarmed her, you're wrong, or disarmed her rather, you're wrong. So I would like to play, whether it was a modernized character, so kind of like an assassin-esque character like Charlize Theron, where it's implied that she always has another weapon, or she has the means to get another weapon, or really just she herself is the weapon.
Yeah.
um, or something going back where we can start getting into knives and daggers and broadswords and some of that lovely stuff, and maybe a milady kind of character. But I think that would be either of those. I think that would be phenomenal.
Totally. What was your first?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna keep going because I want to. What was your first time where you were like, this is what I love. I want to do stage combat forever. What was the battle that got you into it hard?
So it's actually a funny moment. When I was in grad school, so I had a very competitive program, and whenever anything new popped up, everybody did it, undergrads and graduates. And it was a very much keep up with the Joneses. So we got a new head of movement. The guy who had been there my first semester was very focused on like mime work. He had actually worked with Marcel Marceau. So he left. And then the very next semester we got DC Wright. And the whole main focus shifted more to stage combat. So I took a rapier and dagger class and I liked it. And then the next class coming up was broadsword. And I was like, I don't know about this. And took a little coaxing and he got me in the class. And I just kept saying, I don't know. I don't know. Girls don't fight with broadswords. He's like, yes, they do. Then came the disemboweling day.
Ooh.
So it just so happened the way the class was lined up watching DC disembowel his TA, all the women were on, yeah, it's great. All the women are on like one side of the room. I'm standing in the middle and all the guys are on the right side of the room. And so he does this horrible thing to this guy and all the women make like horrible shrill noises and all the guys say like yes or some kind of like grunt and appreciation. And then you hear me, that's awesome, right in the middle. And I got the worst stink eye from the women and I just took a sidestep over by the guys.
Yes.
I think I'm different.
Yes.
And I think I'm going to stay here. So that was really the day where I was like, I really think this is my thing. And some of the things my teacher had been saying to me finally kind of sank in because that was not my focus. My original plan was to become a voice teacher and I was going to keep doing musical theater. And so,
wow, so different.
I completely decided in that moment to change my entire life plan and become a movement teacher, focus on Laban and stage combat and do that instead. So it was one of those like, oh my God, I'm going to do something. Wow, this is not all I had.
Disemboweling day. What
Yeah,
a great
that's
name for
what
the day.
All in disemboweling day, which,
I mean, it also explains why when she was said, I would kill them in the worst ways earlier, she was like smiling.
Oh yeah, she loves disemboweling day.
Loves her some killing and disemboweling.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and I mean, it's funny. Like, I wish there was probably a picture of my face because I think about I was sitting watching John Wick 2 with a friend the other night.
Yeah.
And something would happen, I'd go, oh! I'm like, if anyone, like a normal, like non-theatrical person saw that, they'd be like, that woman is nuts. Like, no, I'm like, I'm really lovely. It's just, this is what I do.
And you definitely are. I do have to actually cut us off. We've been going for over 45 minutes now. Like, wow. It's the conversation just flows when it gets going.
So cool, man.
Thank you so much for calling in with us today, Claire. This has been
Thank you guys for having me.
Awesome.
This has been lovely.
This was a pleasure to talk to you. This was great, Claire. Thank you.
Right?
Yeah. Well,
thank you so much.
Yeah, we do have to get going. I know. I felt like I leveled up again today. It's really cool. I love it.
Level up.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Level up. I love it. So, time to sign off. As always, I'm Peter the Geek.
I am Killjosh.
#Killjosh.
Bill Murray.
Apparently the real Bill Murray.
Yes.
But anyways, thank you again for listening, guys, and we'll see you at the next level.
Claire, you're so cool.
Thank you so much, Claire. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to our show. If you liked Geek XP, help us out by becoming a contributor on our Patreon. We have bonus content, raffles, and more at patreon.com/yourgeekxp. Geek XP is recorded live at Face Off Unlimited headquarters in Astoria, Queens, and was edited by Peter Hargard. Executive producers are Joe Tex, Jay Painter, and Eric Robinson. FOU Studios is a property of Face Off Unlimited, LLC. I'm Peter Hargarden, the senior producer of podcasts here, and on behalf of everyone who worked on the show, we'd like to thank you, the listener, for tuning in. Subscribe to catch all of our other podcasts here on the FOU Studios Podcast Network. To connect with the geeks, follow us at YourGeekXP on Facebook and Twitter. To learn more about FOU, connect with us via social media at FOU Studios and visit us at FOUstudios.com.
Boom!